podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Senseless podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Depperschmidt. I think this episode is probably your kindergarten teacher's worst nightmare, because we're running with scissors. Again. Welcome to week 1 of Running with Scissors Again. I'm so excited about this series because we're going to be talking about limits, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of limits. We're going to be talking about limits that we put on ourselves. We're going to be talking about limits that others put on us. We're going to be talking about good limits and bad limits, and there is no limit to the kind of limits that we'll be talking about in this series. So let's just get right into it. I think running with scissors again. I think the first time that I ever heard the phrase running with scissors, I was in kindergarten. We were told to, go get our supplies for this art project. We were going to cut out some circles and glue them onto construction paper. The teacher said, "Hey, everyone, go get in line, grab some scissors, a glue stick, and 3 different colors of construction paper, and then come back to your desk." And so we all got into a single file line, and I've got my 3 colored sheets of construction paper. I get my glue stick, and then finally I get my scissors, and I'm all excited. So I sprint over to my desk, and for the first time in my life I hear, "Dustin, don't run with scissors." And as far as I can remember, that was the first time that somebody other than one of my parents put a limit on me. From the time that we're children, people are trying to put limits on us. I was 5 years old. I was excited about the task at hand, but the teacher, as well-meaning as she could be, decided that my excitement was not worth the risk of me getting cut by the scissors. She set a limit on my excitement in order to keep me from getting hurt. In no way am I condoning letting, 4 and 5-year-olds run around with sharp, pointy objects, but I think you see my point. We let people limit us because we think the risk of getting hurt is too great. This is true in almost every aspect of our lives, whether it's relationships or whether it's money or, our finances or even just being obedient to God. Sometimes we even put limits on God. I think before we go any farther, we need to really discuss the difference between good and bad limits, because if we can understand that, we can really dive into some pretty deep stuff. And so, obviously, my kindergarten teacher put a good limit on me as a 5-year-old to not run with sharp, pointy objects, a lesson that I still use today and cherish close to my heart, Mrs. Holtwick. You know, that was a good limit. A bad limit is anything that keeps you from growing closer to God. A bad limit could be anything from not allowing yourself to grow closer to God, or from not allowing maybe yourself to open up to your wife. Lots of things can be bad limits. Mostly, I think bad limits are limits that other people have placed on you that you believe. And that could be anything. I mean, what if God has a plan for you? I mean, God does have a plan for you. And what if that plan was for you to be the next Donald Trump? And you're supposed to start this business and you're afraid. You know, you're scared. You just don't think you can do it. So you open up and you ask somebody, like, do you think I'd be good at this? And they say, look, man, I've tried that, and let me tell you, you're not cut out for it. I don't think you could do it. So you say, you know what, I really trusted this person, and they don't think I can do it, and so I'm not going to do it. And maybe you're missing out on something that God had planned for you. I think that's a bad limit. Any limit that can keep you from doing God's work, that's a bad limit. Any limit that you let a human being put on you, that's a bad limit. We worship a God that has no limits. Think about that. We worship a God that has no limits. So letting somebody that just is here on this planet, just another human being, to put limits on you, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because when you worship a God that has no limits, that can do all things, the Bible says God can do all things, and that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So why would you let other people put limits on what you think is possible? All of us have let somebody put a limit on us at some point or another, and I don't know what that looks like for you. There's no way I could, and I won't even pretend to know what that's like. But all of us at some point or another have let somebody put limits on us that were not good limits. For me, this all started when one day I, on Facebook, posted running with scissors again, and just as a joke, and I got a reply that somebody said, that's going to be the name of your book someday. Okay. I thought about that, and I was like, what would a 23-year-old construction worker from Oklahoma write a book about? Let me rewind and kind of just tell you a little bit of that. I've had experiences in my life where, because of my profession, people have thought less of me. And when I decided to do some of these things, like start the podcast or, become an ordained minister or write a book, I had so many doubts in my mind that I could not do these certain things because I had bought into the lie of letting people put limits on what Dustin was capable of doing. And I'm proud to announce that I am an ordained minister. I do have a podcast that is now listened to from over 25 states and 5 different countries, and my first book will be published this year. If I would have let other people put limitations on what they thought was possible for Dustin, I wouldn't have done any of those things. None of those things would have been accomplished, because when you worship a God that has no limits, there's no limit to the things that he can accomplish. What is it in your life that you've let other people limit you from? Think about it. If you have to, write it all down. Just probably, there's thousands of times probably in your life where somebody's limited you or said that you couldn't do this or you couldn't do that. But I'm here to tell you that you worship a God who can do all things. You worship a God that has no limits, and he has no limits to what he can do through you. And he wants to do great things through you because he wants to glorify his name. So put a name to whatever it is that you have that's a limit. Put a name to whatever is limiting you, and then I want you to pick up the scissors tonight, and I want you to run free. I want you to run free of whatever it is that is limiting you from doing what God has called you to do. I want you to run free from whatever it is that's limiting you in your relationship with your spouse. I want you to pick up the scissors and run free from whatever is limiting you from taking that next big step that somebody told you that you couldn't do. What is it that is limiting you from experiencing God's full grace? I want you to run free from that tonight. Pick up your scissors and run. That's all the time that we have for this week. Join us next week as we are running with scissors again.